Hello everyone, thank you for watching this video. And after a long time, so we're starting a new series. In this video, we are going to talk about the DevOps. So most of you all have a questions on DevOps. What is DevOps? What is an Azure DevOps? Um, you know, where do we start if you want to become a DevOps engineer? Because DevOps has multiple components such as Terraform, ARN templates, people talk about them, and Jenkins, Kubernetes, Dockers, Ansible, right? So many things you have in DevOps, and every time you have a lot of confusion, where to start and how to start, what actually a DevOps engineer does, right? What will be his roles and responsibilities? So today I have Ashok with me. He is a senior DevOps engineer. He has been Azure administrator, then become a senior cloud engineer, and now he's working as a senior DevOps engineer. So I will take his help to get some questions clarified and get this get some more clarity on DevOps and its role. Okay. Hey Ashok, thank you for joining me today. Um, as I said, most of my students and I keep on getting a chat as well on WhatsApp. They're confused like, what is DevOps? It's not about the core technical terminology I want to hear. I want to understand what a DevOps engineer does. What will be his roles and responsibilities? And if I want to learn DevOps, where do I start? Can you just
Okay.
give me some kind of a overview or give some examples and help my team or my learners?
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, everyone. So thanks for the introduction. So
Yep.
let me share my screen so that
Yep.
we can explain better. Okay. So I hope my screen is visible.
Yep. I can see it.
Yeah. So first of all, we'll answer one by one. So what is DevOps?
Yep.
So, so DevOps is a set of practices, okay, where you can uh, deliver the application to the client in a quickly manner. Okay. Okay, the main agenda of the DevOps is to deliver the application to the client in a quickly and efficient manner so that the client can start his business very quickly. So that is the main agenda of the DevOps. So in these processes, we will see the development process, okay, and then build process, and then deployment process will be there, and which uses some agile methodologies to deploy and build these applications quickly and efficiently. Okay. So this is in the basic terminology I have explained, but in we go deeper, we may get some more tools around this, developing, building, and deploying, monitoring the application. So many tools are available to accommodate these DevOps practices. Mm,
Okay.
Okay. Mm. So when it comes to the roles of the DevOps engineer, so first thing he need to maintain pipelines to build and deploy the application. So that is a main agenda. So whenever any code changes are there in the repository, the code changes should be built and deployed automatically through these pipelines. So this is a main agenda, main role of the CI/CD, a configuration of CI/CD with respect to the application. So maybe it is a .NET based application, or it is a Java based application, or it is a Python based application. So for this, build and deploy should be there, and these should be done using the pipelines. So here pipelines means it is a like a step-by-step approach to build and deploy the application. In the pipeline, we will configure. So first, checking out the Git repository, and then installing the software required for the application, and then building the application. So for the .NET MS build, for Java, we may use Maven. So based on the programming language, these build tools will be different. And based on the programming language, the packages which we require to install in the agent or the virtual machine, so these will be different. So these will be goes based on the programming languages. So once build is done, you may do code coverage. So for the code coverage, there are a lot of tools are there. Sonar Cube is the most popular one. And then for the .NET, there are .NET inbuilt code dependency, code analysis tools are there. So like this, many tools are available for the code coverage. So these code coverage and all will give some metrics to the developer, like bugs and vulnerabilities, and then duplicated code and technical debt. So these kind of things will be identified using this code coverage. And in the build step, whenever we build some application, it will produce some artifacts. For the Java, it will produce some var file. For the .NET, it will produce a DLL file or exe file. So these exe files, we need to take it and we need to deploy into application, whether it is a VM or whether it is a Docker instance or it is a Kubernetes instance, or maybe it is a PaaS platform like web apps. So like this, in these pipelines, we need to configure these tasks like git checkout, installing, build, code coverage, bugs, and vulnerabilities. And in the deploy stage, also many stages will come, like integration testing. Integration testing will be there. So those all the things will be configured in the pipelines, and the DevOps engineer is responsible to maintain these pipelines. And whenever any issue comes, the DevOps engineer should involve, and he need to take care these pipelines and ensure the smooth process is there, and the software which developed by the developer should be immediately available through this pipeline. And so that is the main responsibility of the DevOps roles.
So the DevOps engineer should know all these tools, like what is expected. So does he know, should be he should be knowing GitHub, SonarCube, all
Mhm.
these tools, or maybe only few tools he should be aware of it, or maybe he just need to focus on the pipelines. What exactly we need to
Mm.
learn?
Yeah. So whether so starting point, whether you are in administrator position or any other position, the basic thing we need to learn is the DevOps related concepts using any technology, whether it is a Azure DevOps technology or AWS DevOps technology, or you can use open source Jenkins as well to learn the first DevOps methodologies. So what are the tasks inside a DevOps practice, and those tasks first we need to learn. So then once this continuous integration and continuous delivery, when you are okay with the basic concepts like build and deploy. So CI is continuous integration and continuous deployment. So this means whenever any changes happened, automatically it should deploy into the application. So this is a basic structure in the CI/CD. So once we are okay with the CI/CD processes, then we can focus on the additional tools, okay, like SonarCube for the code quality analysis, and Trivi for the Docker images vulnerability assessment. Okay. And artifactory will be there to storing the artifacts which are generated in the build pipeline. And then Terraform will be there. So Terraform we used to create infrastructure through code. So the in resources which we are creating inside a Azure or AWS or in the on-premise, you can create using Terraform.
So the question I have here, Ashok,
Mm.
so the candidate should know the development, any kind of development tools here.
So development tools, he need to have some basic knowledge. Okay, on the
So what tools he should be familiar with it?
so from the development perspective, he need to have some basic knowledge which programming language he is working. Suppose he is working on Java, so he need to know how the Java build process will be there and how one artifact will be generated through this build process, and what are all the commands to generate this build, and what are all the tools we need to use. For suppose Maven, we need to use so Maven commands he need to know.
Okay, so the question here, right?
Mm,
Example, if I'm an infra guy, right? So I don't
mm,
know Java, I don't know C sharp, I don't know Python. Maybe I know only PowerShell, right?
mm.
Do I still have a scope to learn? Because
Yeah,
I don't know
so
any programming languages. Can I become a DevOps engineer or not?
yeah, so without some basic knowledge also you can become a DevOps engineer. So there is no restriction on that, but it is good to have the basic knowledge around the programming languages. And in the long term, in whenever you are going to the senior position, some automation also required using programming languages, but in the initial stages, so programming knowledge is not required.
Hmm.
In the initial stages, there are tools available already. So when I take Azure or when I take AWS, so already predefined tasks are already available to build and deploy the application. So you can directly use those tasks to build and deploy this application without any knowledge on the programming. So the DevOps practice, the methodology we need to follow, like build on the programming language and produce some artifact. Through that artifact, you can deploy to some environment, whether it is AWS or Azure or any on-premise environment you need to deploy. So through this cycle, we need to follow. So in the initial stages, we don't require any programming languages, but as we progress from basics to advanced, so in the DevOps CI/CD pipelines, there are not predefined tasks are available for some of the tasks which required for different organizations. So those use cases are not available within the predefined tasks. So for those, we need to write some programming so that some automation we can do and we can reduce some of the build timings and deployment timings to deliver the application.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Mm, got it. So what is an entry level for DevOps engineer, right? So what does an entry level engineer does?
Mm. So before going to that roles, I will give some
Hmm. Go ahead.
uh, path for the beginners.
Hmm.
Okay, so how do a beginner should start the journey of the DevOps?
Yep.
So first he need to learn any DevOps practice, whether it's Azure DevOps or AWS DevOps. Okay, okay. He tried to do some CI/CD for the any application, whether it is a .NET basic application, whether it is a Hello World or some to-do list, any application. He need to able to do the continuous integration and continuous delivery. So within this approach, the first thing he need to learn is the Git, okay, Git version control system he need to learn, or whether it is a Git or a GitHub, he need to learn in the first phase. Then once he is familiarized with the Git, then he need to create some basic application, whether it is a Java or some Python. So there are already predefined templates are available. So for simple apps, Hello World app or Todo app, already predefined templates are available. So he can use that predefined template and he can create the CI, continuous integration. He can create that build and he can produce some artifact and he can store it in the Azure artifacts or some other artifact. So this one he need to learn in the initial. Then he can go for the CD.
Mm-hmm.
So during this process, he can learn some Azure cloud basics only, not on the advanced level. What are all the services like VMs and
Mm-hmm.
Azure web apps? So those things are enough. So then he can create the deployment pipeline so that he can build and deploy this application into the VMs or Azure web apps.
Okay.
So this is a beginner approach. So once he is familiarized with the approach, then he can integrate other tools like SonarQube and all.
So before you move further, right, the
Mhm.
CI/CD pipelines, right? So what language we use to develop these pipelines?
Okay. So in the CI/CD, the familiar language mostly is the YAML. Okay. So it is a key value pair.
So
Okay.
basically,
It
right?
is.
So my question is, so they need to learn YAML, or like, do we also have a predefined templates for the same? Let's say if you wanna experiment this on Azure DevOps,
Mm.
do we have a YAML? Do we need to learn YAML to experiment CI/CD, or maybe do we have any predefined template for the same?
So in the for the Azure DevOps specifically, there are templates are already available. When you
Mm-hmm.
select any task, automatically the YAML will be added into your YAML file.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But it is easy to learn YAML also. It is just a key value pair and it is easy to read also.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. Just it will be one fruit will be there and the fruit is apple. Like this, key values will be there.
Okay.
Okay. It is easy to read and easy to configure also.
Okay.
And to ease the process, Azure DevOps has already has the predefined templates for the most used tasks. So it
Okay.
is easy to configure the YAML in the Azure DevOps.
Okay.
So coming to the this process where we ended, right, beginner to DevOps
Yep.
journey,
Yep.
right? So here, once we are familiar with the concept, then we can move to the monolithic architecture to microservice architecture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So previously, the DevOps engineer starter can able to learn to deploy into the VMs or into the web apps platform
Yep.
as a service based application.
Okay.
But as he progress, he can able to deploy this into some microservice like Docker or Kubernetes. So nowadays, Docker and Kubernetes, most of the companies are using Docker and Kubernetes. So he need to learn these tools as well. So these will tools will package our application into a container image so that the deployments and the dependencies will be very easy to maintain
Okay.
in the Docker images. And so Docker has limited capabilities, so Kubernetes will come into rescue. So
Mm-hmm.
Kubernetes has a container orchestration framework where you can scale the containers to multiple thousands, and you can also scale to any number of pods in the
Okay.
Kubernetes. And with the Kubernetes, high traffic will be served. Okay. Millions of traffic users
So just
will
to
be
stop
served
you here,
by
right?
Kubernetes. Yeah.
Just to stop you. So
Mm,
basically there are different levels. So one,
mm,
you build a Azure infrastructure like a virtual machine, deploy
mm,
an application. That is one way of deploying the applications and managing the applications and delivering the application to end user. The
Right.
other way is to deploy the application on a web app. It's a PaaS
Mm,
service in Azure, right?
right.
So both scenarios, whether you deploy manually by logging into the vision, maybe by pushing the code into the web app, or automatically through Azure DevOps using CI/CD pipelines, correct?
Right.
So the same application can also be running in the Docker, same application can also be running in the Kubernetes, right?
Mm,
Now
right.
we are just moving from this VMs and web app model to the Dockers and Kubernetes, and that
Mm,
method we call it as a microservices architecture.
mm,
Am I right?
right. Right.
And this still Docker and Kubernetes deployment can also be done through Azure DevOps or AWS DevOps, or through Jenkins pipelines, right?
Mm, mm,
Okay,
right.
just this is the track. Okay. And
Mm,
you were just talking about the benefits of what is Kubernetes, what versus what is Docker, right? How
mm,
Kubernetes is going to be helpful to everybody. Okay.
right. Right.
Okay.
So when it comes to the deployment, so here in the DevOps, everything is automated only, automated approach only.
Hmm.
So we need to configure the CI/CD processes so that whenever any change in the repository, so the change should be deployed into the end load. So here load means whether it is a VM or whether it is a web app or it is a Docker instance or Kubernetes instance. So all things should be automated so that the development team should not hamper on the operation process. So they can focus on the features and they can leave on the deployment part. So that is the main agenda. So everything is automated here. So one more you asked is mm, 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 mm. One is yeah, whether the Azure will support these Docker and Kubernetes whether automatically, right? So either Azure DevOps and AWS DevOps. Okay. So they both support the Kubernetes deployment and the Docker deployments as well. Okay.
Hmm.
And there are already predefined tasks are there. Okay. So using the task, you can just configure some of the basic details, some service accounts, and you can deploy into the Kubernetes or Docker instances. But when it comes to the Jenkins, so Jenkins is a open source tool. So it can also accommodate all the deployments and all the CI/CD practices.
So just to stop you, right?
Mm,
I just want to go on a flow, right?
mm,
Azure DevOps, AWS DevOps, and Jenkins. So they are
mm,
facilitating the
mm,
platform to manage this continuous integration, continuous deployment.
right,
In end of the day, the application is going to be hosted in the either Kubernetes, Dockers, or VM or a web app, correct?
correct.
So here, be it Azure DevOps or AWS DevOps, so they both are giving you the um, version control options as well, correct?
Correct.
But Jenkins don't have the version control option. It just gives you the pipeline capabilities. You still
Mm,
need to use a GitHub as a version control. Am I right?
right, right,
Okay.
right.
Now I'm clear.
So yeah, so Azure DevOps and AWS DevOps are the complete packages. So
Hmm.
where you can build and deploy artifact and test cases, everything will be there within these Azure DevOps and AWS DevOps SaaS
Okay.
platforms.
Hmm.
So when it comes to the Jenkins, it is a open source one where we don't have that much flexibility and some tools like version control we need to maintain separately. So
Hmm.
Jenkins only act as a pipeline orchestration tool.
Okay.
Okay. So here when it comes to the Docker and Kubernetes, so in the Jenkins, the predefined some extensions are available in the
Hmm.
in the Jenkins.
Hmm.
So using these extensions, we can build and deploy to the Docker and Kubernetes using Jenkins also. But it will be some complex scenarios will be there. Some configuration will be some tedious process when it comes to the Jenkins. But when compared to the Azure DevOps, it is very easy to configure these Docker and Kubernetes
Okay.
deployments in the Azure and AWS.
One question, is
Mm.
Jenkins is available as a SaaS service or we have to deploy it in a server?
So Jenkins, we need to deploy it in a server.
Okay.
And this Jenkins also available as a Docker image also.
Hmm.
After installing the Docker also, we can run Jenkins as a container also.
Okay, got it.
And we can scale that container as we required the build
Okay,
agents.
I see. Yeah. This is the second phase of a DevOps engineer role, right?
Mm, right.
Okay.
Yeah. So coming to the roles, so in the DevOps engineer role, so there will be two types. Okay. So one
Mm-hmm.
is medium projects,
Mm-hmm.
and another one is some big projects. You can
Major.
consider
Mm-hmm.
major projects or big projects.
Mm-hmm.
So in the reality, what will happen in the medium projects? So there will have around 2 to 5 DevOps engineers,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and they want to do all the tasks by these 2 to 5 DevOps engineers only.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it is a build or whether it is a application deployment or any change or a infrastructure related change.
See, I'm
Uh,
confused here. So, sorry to stop you, right? We
mm,
always say build and deploy.
mm,
What is the DevOps engineer is gonna build it? There's nothing, right? You just build the pipelines, am I right?
right, right.
Because end of the code has been developed by the developers. They just push it to the repos or a version
Repos.
control system,
Mm,
and we create a pipelines, and the version pipelines will pick up the data from the version control systems and
right,
do a deployment. Am I right? When I
right.
say DevOps engineer is taking care of build and deployment, so
Mm,
which means they either use Ansible to deploy these pipelines, or some other language to deploy the pipelines, right? Or
correct,
PowerShell or any other tools, correct? Okay.
correct. Correct.
Okay.
So he will configure the CI/CD pipeline, and they will
Hmm.
continue on the flow. So
Okay.
whenever any change is there, this pipeline will trigger, and this pipeline will build and deploy artifact into the VM or web app.
Hmm.
Okay. So that is
So.
there. And if any issues are there within
Hmm.
this pipeline, so
Hmm.
the DevOps engineer should be notified. So these mechanism also should be there within these pipelines, so
Hmm.
that he can get some email or some message in the Slack, so that he can take care of that pipeline. So something is broken in the pipeline, so that DevOps engineer will go and fix it. So this is one way.
Okay.
And another thing is, for each sprint, there will be some changes will come
Hmm.
when it comes to the application. So maybe the developer require one more web app, or he may require one more VM.
Hmm.
So for this, he need to create the infrastructure as a code using Terraform.
Hmm.
You need to create the code. I need to place it in a Git repository, so that
Hmm.
this will be deployed into the either Azure cloud or AWS cloud.
Okay.
And this is one phase. And this is like a feature. We can consider a features.
Hmm.
Okay. So these are all sprint wise features for the DevOps engineer.
Okay.
And there will be optimization will also come.
Hmm.
So my pipeline is going 1 hour long. So what is happening with my pipeline?
Okay.
So the DevOps engineer can go and check like this task, like build a task or a dependencies task is taking more time. So
Hmm.
how can he reduce this time to some minimal 10 minutes or
Hmm.
20 minutes like that? So in the billing side, when it comes to the DevOps, when we are using the Azure or AWS, so the billing will happen on the minutes. So how much time we are using the SaaS platform,
Hmm.
so that the billing will be produced according to the minutes we consumed.
Okay.
So the DevOps engineer can optimize these build and deploy timelines, so that our billing pricing will be reduced at the end of the day.
Okay.
Okay. So this is optimization thing.
Hmm.
And one more is monitor.
Hmm.
So the DevOps engineer should create the monitoring tools Okay, whether it is a open source tools or it is a Azure Monitor or AWS CloudWatch. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any tool he can utilize and he need to monitor the infra, okay, whether VM
Mm-hmm.
infra or web app infra. He need to monitor for the any bottlenecks, whether CPU
Mm-hmm.
is throttling or memory is throttling in the basic terminology,
Okay.
and in the application terminology, whether the page is loading slowly or fastly. Okay, is that it
Okay.
is the web page is taking high time or low time. So these kind of metrics he can analyze using these open source tool or predefined Azure Monitor or AWS CloudWatch tools.
Mm-hmm.
And based on the thresholds, let's say CPU is hitting greater than 80. So some teams, okay, so DevOps engineer will not take all the load. So there will be some teams, monitoring teams will be there. So in some organization teams will be there, but in some organization teams are not there. Then so the DevOps engineer has to take care whether why this application is hitting so much, whether it is an application required this much CPU or not. So those things also he need to maintain, and according to that he need to scale the infrastructure. So those things also you need to take care.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. And coming back to the this segregation roles, medium and major projects. So in the medium projects, the teams actually they are looking for the DevOps engineer to do all the tasks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, whether it is a configuration of pipelines, whether optimization or creation of Terraform files, okay, whether it
Mm-hmm.
is Ansible files or Terraform files, and monitoring. So they are thinking to keep 2 to 5 DevOps engineers so that they will take care all the tasks by themselves in the medium projects.
Okay.
Okay. So when it comes to the major projects, there will be roles will be segregated. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the Terraform tasks will be segregated,
Okay.
Kubernetes tasks will be segregated, and configuration of troubleshooting this CI/CD optimization will be segregated, and monitoring will be segregated in the bigger teams so that they can focus on these CI/CD, Terraform, and Kubernetes, because themselves again these are very big tools, Terraform and Kubernetes.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the major projects, you can see this segregation so that they can work on the specific areas, and if required any help is needed, they can help themselves within the teams if something is required. Okay. And
Okay.
and in the reality what will happen, so everything will be in the Git repository, okay? Whether
Mm-hmm.
they can use GitHub platform or some Bitbucket platform, okay?
Okay.
Or Azure repos they can use to store these changes,
Yep.
whether it is a Terraform code or application code or Kubernetes code, okay? Any code they can, at the end of the day they will place it in the Git repository,
Okay.
and the engineers have to raise the pull requests for the changes,
Mm-hmm.
and whoever the lead will be there, the lead will review these changes, and he will check what are all the changes he is proposing for the pipeline or for the infrastructure as a code, Terraform code, or whether it is a Ansible YAML files change or Docker YAML Docker files change, okay, or Terraform files change. Anything he will raise a PR to his GitHub branch, and the lead will, or a L3 will be there. So he will check the changes for this, and he will review the changes, and he will propose some changes. So according to the organization structure, he will review the changes and he will propose. So this should be not there. This should be there. So again, he will review the L2 engineer or L1 engineer. He will make the changes in his PR pull request, and he will again push to the Git repository. So once everything is reviewed, everything is good, looking good, then you can merge into the master branch. Okay, in the Git terminology, master branch is the place where everything is clean and ready to deploy.
Okay.
So once it is merged, so that build and deploy pipelines will trigger from here,
Okay.
and they can be deployed to first dev environment to check whether everything is fine. Once everything is fine, then they can promote the code to the test environment where the testers, the automation testing and manual testing will come into picture, and those guys will test the platform whether everything is looking good or not. So then they can go for the pre-production and then production.
Okay.
So around this also, by promoting these stages also, so there are some processes we need to follow. So development you can directly deploy to check whether my changes are working fine or not. But once everything is verified by the developers and the DevOps engineers, everything is looking good from the development environment. So they can go to the test environment. They will approve. So here some in the in the Azure DevOps we have terminology called approvals. So once the DevOps engineer and development team approved, so the code automatically deployed to test environment. So in the test environment, the automation testing team will do the automated based tests, and the manual testing team will do the manual tests. And once they are okay with the platform, then they can approve so that the latest code changes, the latest app will be deployed to the pre-prod. So and the pre-prod will be given to mostly the business team. So it is a replica of the production
Production.
where the business team will check whether all the features which proposed by the business team are working fine. Then they are okay with the changes. If not, then again it will go to the same cycle: development, testing, and then pre-prod. Once the business team is okay, then they will give the approval to deploy into the production.
Okay.
So this will continuously go in the cycle.
Okay. Got it.
Mm,
Yeah. So I think this gives me yes some clarity on what a DevOps engineer do on day-to-day basis.
mm,
And if anybody wanted to start learning DevOps, I think this gives them the clarity as well where they have to start. And so far, like there is a lot of confusion, like you know, VM, web apps, and Kubernetes, Docker, Jenkins, right? So now I think we got some clarity, right?
mm, mm,
Yeah. So what I understood is like if anybody wanted to learn DevOps or to want to become a DevOps engineer, they should first have some sort of knowledge on the Azure or AWS because the most of the customers are either going to Azure or AWS, right? They need to
right,
know the platform, little bit of understanding, at least the services, right?
right.
Once they have the understanding, it's important to know the repo tools, especially the GitHub, right?
Mm,
That they have
right.
to be aware of it. The third thing is that most important one is the deployment methodologies. Let's say agile methodologies, right? So they should know what is the agile methodology, what is a sprint, right? How do we follow the deployment process, right? So that they have to know, and they should know how to create a CI pipelines and CD pipelines, how to deploy them into the whether to the VM or to the web app or to the Kubernetes or Dockers, right?
Right.
Then, moreover, they need to understand how to create a pull request. What is the process we follow? What is a branching strategy? What is a master branch, dev branch? How do we make changes to the dev? How do we deploy it? Right? What are the different stages of pipeline? So they should be aware of this pull push request, right? So they know
Mm,
in future if there is a project comes, they should be able to handle it, right? So it
right.
is not necessary to learn, the tools like Sonar Cube, Selenium, all those things. in the initial stage, right?
Right,
But
right.
as in when they move forward, get some experience as a DevOps engineer, a senior DevOps engineer, it's important to know the tools as well.
Mm,
So as in when they get opportunity, they can start learning and implementing it, right?
right,
Okay,
right.
sounds good.
Yeah. So
Okay.
when it comes to the broad knowledge of these topics,
Mm-hmm,
okay, so there will be two approaches here in the
mm-hmm,
DevOps as well.
mm-hmm,
So one is T-based approach
mm-hmm,
and one is V-based approach. Okay.
mm-hmm,
So in the T-based approach, the engineer should have basic knowledge of all topics,
mm-hmm,
whether it is a Git, whether it is a Docker, whether it is a Terraform, whether it is Ansible, okay, Azure DevOps. So you need to have basic knowledge. Okay. So once he one the basic engineer should get the deep knowledge on one topic. Okay. So in
mm-hmm,
this for the DevOps engineer, it is good to have on the Azure DevOps.
mm-hmm,
Okay. Once he have the full knowledge on the Azure DevOps, so then he can go for the V-based approach. So in the V-based approach means so whatever the other topics are there. Okay. So the peak is Azure DevOps. He has a full knowledge and the Azure DevOps practices. So then he can broaden his knowledge on the other topics. Okay. So let's say Git he is using. So he can extend his knowledge on the Git. Okay. So that he can reach the level of Azure DevOps on the Git
mm-hmm.
system as well. So another thing is Ansible. So he need to broaden his knowledge on the Ansible as well. So like this, one by one, he need to focus. So at the end of the day, one core knowledge he has to be expert. So on the DevOps, and
Mm-hmm.
next the other topics like a Git or Docker, okay, Kubernetes, the Terraform. So slowly you need to pick up on these topics one by one.
Okay.
Okay.
So one last question, Ashok. I think
Mm,
we have covered most of them.
mm,
Um, we, now we learn many things, right? What is
mm,
the starting point now? What is the starting point? How many days it will take for a person to become at least a DevOps engineer, not an expert on that area, right? Just a DevOps engineer, maybe L2, right?
mm, mm,
And who knows about at least the T-based approach, who
mm,
can clear the interviews, who understand the project very well, right? Who knows what a DevOps engineer does day-to-day basis, right? If somebody asks, hey, what have you done in past few days, past few years, you
mm,
should be in a position to explain whatever you talked about it, right?
mm.
So
Right.
where he has to start and how long it's going to take, what is the best approach? I think then we can conclude on this.
Okay. So the starting point for any engineer to become a DevOps engineer is to learn the first Git. Okay. So how to use this version control system. So total 199% of the development operations will performed on the Git platform only. So the DevOps engineer should focus first on the Git. Okay.
Hmm.
So how the code is maintained, how the version control is happening. So these things he need to know. And on the day-to-day basis also, the DevOps engineer should work with the Git only to raise a pull request or any feature
See, I
changes.
want to be very honest with you, Ashok here.
Mm, mm,
I've been learning Git since almost 2 3 years. I
okay.
learn Git.
Mm,
I know push, pull, and a
mm,
match,
mm,
all those things. Because I haven't got an opportunity, I forget. Because Git has
okay.
so many commands.
Yeah. Okay. So Git
So
in
it's a
Git,
common issue, I believe. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So in the Git, the main things we need to know is the pull request. So pull request is a main.
Mm-hmm.
So once pull request we are okay, then we need to go for the next
Mm-hmm.
concepts, Azure DevOps.
Okay.
Okay. So in our course, we will explain the complete CI/CD processes using Azure DevOps.
Mm-hmm.
In this, you can learn the CI/CD processes to build and deploy one sample application to Azure Web Apps or Azure VMs.
Okay. That
Okay,
sounds good
okay,
actually. Can you also
yeah,
show how to
yeah.
deploy in the Kubernetes as well, or Dockers as well, the same
Y-
application
Yeah,
using the
so
same CI/CD pipelines?
yeah, same using the same CI/CD pipelines, we'll deploy into Docker instances,
Okay.
and we also deploy into the Kubernetes instances, Kubernetes clusters.
Can you also help us, like, whatever the changes that developers does, right, with the different versions of the same code,
Mm,
right? Can you also help us doing that? Let's say we will deploy application with the version 1 on 4 platforms, VM, web
mm,
app, Dockers, and Kubernetes. Can we have another version of the application do the same deployment, like just want to replicate real-time environment? Can we do that? Is that achievable?
yeah, yeah, it is achievable. So
Mm-hmm,
through automation, we need to have the Terraform scripts or the
mm-hmm,
ARM scripts should be in place
mm-hmm,
so that you can do the variables. We can change from dev to test, and you can
mm-hmm.
deploy the entire environment within the pipeline so that you can have one more version of your application up and running.
Okay. Can we play with all the use cases that you see in real time? Let's say GitHub, right? Git commands.
Mm,
Like we just talked about it, merge, Git
right.
conflicts, branching
Mm,
strategies. Can we play all those
yeah.
scenarios? Okay.
So in our course, we will see all the scenarios, the
Mm-hmm,
conflicts and pull request raising and
mm-hmm,
merging the branches and different merging strategies followed by the organization standards.
mm-hmm.
Okay, when it comes to the Git, when it comes to the CI/CD, so we will take one sample application and we will deploy into multiple environments, whether it is a web apps or the VMs and Docker instances, and we will deploy these using the Terraform or ARM templates, okay,
Okay.
where our infrastructure will be defined in code format,
Okay.
and using that code format we will deploy using the same CI/CD process.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. Mm, yeah. Okay. So total to learn this, so it will take around 30 to sorry, it will take around 30 to 35 sessions to cover all these topics, and to bring this knowledge, so it will take another 30 to 30 now 35 days to practice. Okay,
Okay.
so as a DevOps, to become a DevOps engineer, the practice is a key. So we need to practice all the use case scenarios so that we are equipped with the industry standards of the DevOps methodologies. So that if some interviewer asks, hey, I want to do a deployment using Terraform and I want to automate the scripts also using Terraform, so that we are in a position to do all the automation within our CI/CD process. So so we need to practice also. So
No,
whatever.
no, no, I agree. So, but you said 30 to 35 sessions are for the giving a training, and 30 to another 30 sessions are for the practice. Is that what you're saying?
No, no. So 30 to 35 sessions, we will provide the training. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So in the training also, we will provide the tasks, so which you need to
Okay.
perform along with the course. And once you are completed with the course also, so take one application, either any application, and do your own practice along with the sessions.
Mm-hmm. Will.
And while
Mm-hmm.
doing this practice along with your sessions, along with some random application, you will get again lot of doubts. Okay. So those
Okay.
things you can clarify.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Yeah, I think we just need to, during the sessions, right, we need to build a real organization structure. Like you will have your Scrum Master, if I'm not wrong, right?
Mhm.
And you have a DevOps lead, and you have a DevOps L2 engineer, you have an application developer, right? So we have to introduce these roles, and so that they should feel like, they are into real DevOps organization and they're really working on it, right? They should
Mm.
feel like, okay, they are a new joiners who joined the team, and you are going to train them and giving them a work and day-to-day tasks. They'll see issues, and we will help them in fixing it. So can we set up this kind of environment during the sessions?
Yeah, it is possible. We can set
Okay.
up those kind of environments. Like
Yeah.
one should act as a L3 guy, where he
Mm-hmm.
will define the architecture
Yeah.
and he will define the plan for the
Okay.
DevOps.
Mm-hmm.
And the L2 guy, he can work as a
Grasp the
configuration of
knowledge and
CA,
work on it. Yeah. Yeah.
work on the CA/CD process.
Okay.
And we can define these roles, and based on the roles, the team can approach one person lead and another person, and we can also define one testing engineer.
Okay.
So like that, we can mention roles so that each one will can perform the same role, and they will provide the feedback to
Excellent.
another another teams.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ashok. I think you have covered everything that is required. So I think this will give some more clarity for everyone who wanted to learn. Right.
Mm,
So I appreciate your time.
yeah.
Um, all right. So in the next or upcoming videos, we'll try to add some more use cases with the
Okay.
detailed architecture, so that it will be helpful to everybody to understand easily.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. And everyone, whoever is watching this video, in case if you wanted to know more about it, you can do reach out to us. And you have our email ID and you have our WhatsApp number. Uh, do reach out to us. We are happy to guide you further and assist you further. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you all.